Mayor Michael Kerr, only one thing on the agenda today, and that was the Daintree Ferry solution. Have we got a solution?
Well, the motion has passed, and the motion is for the staff to move forward with a vessel with more capability of loading and unloading to make it faster, and infrastructure works to ensure that the cars can get closer to the ferry quick as possible. And it's important that we now have a motion on the table. Because the previous motion regarding the 2 ferry contract expired, the staff didn't have anything to progress with, and this is why it's been so important to get this up so that we can actually start moving forward. The staff now have permission to start doing something before they didn't. So this will be a work in progress. Things will come back to council. Things will, as the factual things start now coming forward because the staff have that permission, and we can make some decisions moving forward on how we do it. And as I said in the meeting, that could be, do we wish to own it, or is there another company that can do it cheaper and better for us? These are things that we can now decide, but at the end of the day, the 2 ferry system, lengthwise for time, in the report it says it wasn't practical. It was more than likely that we would not get the permits through, and if we did, it would be a great expense getting the approvals to get the permits, and not to mention the fact of running 2 ferries, very, very expensive for a small shire where we don't have the rate base to be forking out for 2 ferries on that when we've got so much water infrastructure, etc., that we need to do.
So it got across the line today, and you held the meeting, it was a special meeting, 22 days before your normal meeting, so you obviously thought this was fairly urgent to do.
It is. This has gone on for a long period. And I still have absolutely no doubt in my mind I did the right thing by pulling that contract at the time and going back out to public consultation. Okay, yes, the consultation showed that 1 in 3 people wanted a bridge, but those 1 in 3 people this shire never had an opportunity to speak, and they absolutely should have. So now that that's been done properly, we know a ferry system is the correct way to go. The community has clearly spoken that fairly and justly, and so now we can move forward with the solution that's actually financially viable for this shire, and that is very important.
Now, this new ferry, it has extra lanes, and we discussed that last time, so it will replace the existing ferry. So a couple of things. The new ferry, money was mentioned at the meeting of $6 million for this new ferry. Is that around the ballpark?
Well, this is the estimates that the staff have given us because, again, they didn't have the authority to go into depth with it. Now they do, so now they can actually do some real work involved in this, come back to us with actual costs of how much this is going to be. And then we can start, advocating to the state and federal government for funding opportunities to be able to get the funds to build this. Or as I said in the meeting, it could be the case that we could find a ferry supplier who wants to run it also, and they will pay those costs to build it and they will run it. This time it'll be a much better contract to ensure that our ratepayers, will continue to have a service at all times.
So in the future, the council won't necessarily own this ferry. You could look at the situation of having a contractor operate this ferry, similar to what happened with the last ferry.
It's an open decision.
Okay.
My personal preference is I like the fact of owning the asset and having someone else run it. At least we know it's ours. At least we know we're never ever going to be without it. It's going to be ours to keep. We've got to be sensible financially as well. As councillors, we are bound by good governance when it comes to financial matters. And if it comes to us with a report showing that this company can do it for a far better price, far cheaper, of course we have to look at it. We've got to be real, but we've got to make sure that we protect our ratepayers with the contract that's made with them. So it's an open book, but at least this gives us a direction. We can start now. Straight away, we've got money in the budget already to start doing infrastructure works on the ground, so we can start looking towards the priority lane on the northern side. We can start looking at moving the booths back on the southern side so that if there's more cars get to the ferry quicker. All these little things that we've been told can assist making it a faster service. And we need to start doing these things now before we get to a point where there's going to be lengthy delays like there used to be.
We pointed out to Newsport readers last time that this new ferry really does speed up the amount of cars going across. You've got 2 lanes coming in and filling the ferry. It's something like every hour 95% more cars. Vehicles. It's just amazing stuff.
Well, from the statistics that the engineers here worked out, we've got 1 lane going onto the ferry. So 1 car at a time goes onto the ferry, and there's 3 lanes. What they're proposing with the new ferry is the possibility of having 4 lanes and 2 cars loading at the same time. So it quickens up the whole thing, gets the other side, 2 cars at a time come off as well. So that does speed up that process, and as you keep going backwards and forwards doing that, of course, you're getting more cars across, and that's the whole goal of it.
The present ferry, if we were to get a new ferry, is it a trade-in? Do you sell it? What do you do with the existing ferry?
Well, the last time the engineers looked at it, the hull looks good. That they couldn't find any issues with the hull, and that comes out again next March for a proper full AMSA inspection, so we'll definitely know then. But when they pulled it out partially out of the water to do the works on the ramp, they said that it's certainly looking good. It's going to have 2 new ramps on it. Mechanically, they do a lot of service work on it to ensure that it keeps operating well, and they've replaced the parts and do their maintenance schedules and all that. So, it's a good ferry that could well and truly be sold somewhere else. It's open. It could end up being scrap metal. We don't know yet. But, I certainly believe that we could be able to sell it for at least something. There must be someone else that wants a ferry of that matter.
Okay, it got across the line today, so we're on our way. At least we're on our way after many, many years. Lisa Scommers, the Deputy Mayor, wanted to just put a caveat to the whole thing, and that is that the CEO report back to the councillors on a quarterly basis. Was that good?
I certainly don't think it's going to hurt by any means. I believe...
But it wasn't necessary in your book?
The CEO and the staff would be reporting to us anyway. And every time anything would come up that's over $200,000, for example, it's got to come to the councillors for an approval in that respect. So there are lots of different methods and means of the information will come to councillors regardless. Yes, I think it's probably a nice, clean, good idea that the information comes to us at a quarterly meeting, which is great. As long as the CEO did say at the meeting as well, which, there was a concern I had, if there's any confidential negotiations going on at that stage, of course, it's not good to be putting that information out to the public if you're trying to do a deal with a possible operator of the ferry, for example. There's confidentiality there that you need to keep. So those things, of course, are covered also under the Local Government Act. As the CEO said, they'd need to go into a closed meeting for the councillors rather than the open meeting.
Okay, for locals, for visitors, all of us on the southern side and the people on the northern side, up in the Daintree themselves, today's decision, how do you think it will affect them in the future? It looks as though at this stage positive.
I think it should be positive. At least we've got a direction to go, and we haven't had a direction, and that's been a concern. I know there's lots of questions coming from people that live across the river as far as how's this going to work, what's going to happen with that, what's going to happen with this. These are things that we can now, work out and talk with them about it and see what ways would work best. We need to ensure that the policies that they have in place for emergency vehicles are in place and working. So they don't have to hold the ferry up for too long whilst waiting for an emergency vehicle to come. I know they've already done work with the petrol and the diesel supplier, for example, where he only comes first thing in the morning, so he's not there during peak hour. Things like that can be put in place to ensure the service runs as smoothly and as good as possible. And I'm sure there still will be a lot of questions by the locals who live across there to find out how's this going to work. But these are things that we will work on. But as I said, at least now we've got a direction to start heading.
We're underway.
We're on the way.
All right. Mayor Michael Kerr, thank you.
Thank you.